Hello and welcome to the Bible Study Girl podcast. The first voice that you're hearing is that of Bible Study Brother, because this is a special episode of our of the BSG Book Club series, Boundaries, Chapter 9. And the reason that you do not hear the Bible Study Girl is because we are doing, like I said, Chapter 9, Boundaries and Your Spouse. And therefore, I brought in Bible Study Sister-in-Law, or Bible Study my wife. I don't know how to do that.
Let's just have Let's just have BSG correct it later.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever Serena puts down in the description is what she is. But we brought her in so that way we, as a young, vibrant married couple, can discuss the chapter and be able to give testimony to what we gained. Things that we've learned and the like. Be sure that you guys are checking out our YouTube page. The link is down in the description now. I know I realized I had been saying that and it had not been down in the description. Didn't know. But now, as of this episode, has always been in the description. So that way you can get to the YouTube and subscribe. So that way you can see all the videos and things that we're putting up. We appreciate you guys' support on the front end and are glad that you are here to join us. So, wife,
Hello.
We have endeavored to go through chapter 9 of Boundaries, so that way we can give our perspective. And as we often do, we're not going to rehash the entire chapter. We're just going to highlight spots that really spoke to us and that really have changed viewpoints or perspectives for us and helped us grow as a married couple. So I want to start with what was the most interesting thing you got out of the chapter?
The most interesting thing I got out of the chapter was who's responsible for what kind of portion, talking about
is this yours, mine, or
is
ours?
this yours, mine, or ours? Yeah. For the record, I want to be transparent here. Bible Study Brother has the physical copy of the book. I listened to the book on Libby. So if you have the Libby app, it is available for you to listen to. It's really great. The narration ain't too bad. So I may mispronounce some of the sections. But yeah, the section on is it yours, mine, or ours, like kind of defining what feelings actually are, stating, I feel sad, or I feel happy, or I feel alone, instead of I feel that you ... which is more a your thoughts on a situation, or you kind of criticizing the circumstances. You're not taking ownership of how those circumstances make you feel. The other thing that I thought was interesting in terms of the responsibility was what we do about those feelings. So I feel sad because I don't think we spend enough time together, is an example, right? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe y'all spend a lot of time together, but when your spouse is away, you feel sad or alone because your spouse needs space, right? What do you do with those feelings? Well, you take responsibility for those feelings.
I get what you're kind of doing. Well, not kind of doing. You're combining front end and back end of chapter, which is like, I was like,
it's kind of like, yeah, I'm jumping around, so forgive me. But so if that's the case, taking responsibility for those feelings and then doing something about it, because you are responsible for your wants, needs, and desires, not your spouse, not the other person, which I think is counterintuitive to the way that most people think about marriage and and how marriage is, is advertised to us.
I don't even think it's just beholden to marriage. Like, I know that for me, one of the big issues when we first started dating in high school was my thoughts on that. I made you responsible for everything. And
how so?
So being with you, like I used to call you my muse and everything, because like being with you just made me happy. and therefore it was easier to write songs and do all this stuff when I was doing it. But then like when you left, for our brief stint or whatever wasn't brief, but, for the amount of time
in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, it feels brief now. It feels so very brief.
Very brief, but anyway.
But at the time, I made you so responsible that I'm then not taking accountability for the things that I needed to do. You know, I needed a better relationship with God. I needed to not tie my chastity and everything else to our relationship. I tied I tied cursing in my music. Like I have like 6 songs that I remember where I was just like, nope, didn't matter. It added to nothing. I'm back out here, and it's real, raw rap.
Raw rap.
And it was so difficult because I tied all those things to you. Like literally, I went from, I was writing every day. From probably 9th grade. Well, no, not even 9th grade, from junior high on up to, like I said, I wrote those 6 songs within the year. And then like for about, it was a while. Like I just felt like I was the biggest failure in the world and I wasn't going to pick it back up. And it wasn't until, shout out to Myron, came back around that I was even able to get back into music in a way that like I'm doing this for me.
Right.
And not for me in a way, but in like I'm going to use my purpose and my talents as I've learned more now.
Right. But to some degree for you, like not in a selfish sense, but in a self-aware, healthy sense. You are doing it for yourself, and because you are again responsible for your needs, wants, and desires. And so that was one of the things that I thought was most interesting, and probably something I know personally I need to work on and be more aware of, but I know we're going to talk more about that later on. So I'll save that. That's one of the things.
For me, I think it was that same part in realizing how then to give you what it is that I needed by trying more so to explain. I tell you all the time, because you are so reactionary to not liking conflict at all, and you just immediately want to go into however it is that you can fix it.
Yes. And
then I always say to you, I said, well, if you're not letting me tell you what's wrong with me, doctor, you can't fix anything.
True.
And so trying and learning to do that better, because I know that as long as I can say I feel, that doesn't disarm you to immediately feel offense or go into a place of disconnecting. Well, I didn't do, and disconnecting yourself from the conversation. It opens a huge door for understanding, and hopefully for you to be able to be able to listen without feeling the need to immediately cut off and just try and go to a solution that's not going to solve anything because you don't know what you're solving. Mm-hmm. And understanding that aspect of okay, so in certain arguments that we've had, recognizing, oh, this is a me thing. This is how I feel. And you're not responsible for that. And so this is what I would like to do. And sometimes I reject it because I'm trying to do it together. Right. And it's no, this is something that, this is my feeling. I can then present to you what I would like to do with that in a way of a boundary setting or whatever. Hey, this hurt my feeling, or this causes me to feel like our structure is crumbling because I feel this when this happens. And I feel, that I need to take steps to do that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to continue feeding into this because it's doing nothing for what I need. I especially remember as they were talking later in the chapter, in the part that you were discussing earlier, which is, I think it's let me see here. Well, it is a question of balance. Right. Because you were bringing up the example of this couple where they were discussing spending time with one another, and she always wanted to spend time. And he was so not wanting to do that all the time that he would go out of his way to make sure that he was out doing something a lot.
Well, he said twice a week or
twice a week,
and
then
one afternoon
on the weekend. But
he would go out with friends and stuff to a game or to golf.
And so I thought about that, and I remember very vividly the first 2 years of our marriage in you going out and like, or just you going out in general, that I probably still had certain insecurities, if you will, about that. Not in the sense that I thought you were like out here being out here or something like that, but
well, certainly not
in the way that, you know, because I wasn't out doing something, because I had given up a lot of my friendship time and stuff because I couldn't go out and do as many, well, this is the single guy stuff, and then I didn't have as many friends that were into gaming and anime in the way that I am. So it wasn't like I could go out and do stuff because I don't want to go to like a football game. I'm not really trying to go to the strip club or something like that. I'm not really trying to, you know, do certain things that they would consider the masculine things that you need to be doing all the time. I want to go and play games. I want to go and eat somewhere. Like I want to go travel or do whatever, or something that's, you know, whatever. And like, yeah, I will go play basketball for like hours on end. I haven't done it in so long, but used to be like my thing because it was just fun. But anyway, and what would happen is you would be out and it's like, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
And like, even if I wanted to, like, as they're saying in the book, to create the balance of like, hey, if you like, I think another one of the examples was if you're late, the husband like leave. Hey, I want to leave at this time.
Right.
And I've expressed it to you. And if you're
late,
not ready, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And then getting home is like, well, I wanted to be on time. You did not.
Mm-hmm. And making it clear that was your choice. You did things that led to that consequence. I'm not going to suffer for your consequence.
Right. And so what's funny is I couldn't even do that because even if my consequence was, because you would expect to go out and come home and immediately get attention.
Yes, I would.
And I would be like,
but you was gone all night. You be mad and pouty
because I would
and
be
withdrawn
because I would be tired because at that point, like, there would have been no proper communication as to when you thought you were going to be home and everything else. And I'm like,
yes. And I do take responsibility for that portion.
But the funny portion is I couldn't even give a consequence of going to sleep because I can't sleep. Because it's hard for me to just go to sleep without you.
But it's interesting because you're kind of like you did, like what you mentioned I was doing earlier. You're kind of mixing the two together because on the one hand, yes, if I, as like the responsible party to you, am not communicative in a sense of I'm gonna strive to be home at this time. This is the time you can expect me to be home, and actually adhere to that. Or at least in my case, I would try to give you updates like, hey, we're winding down. I should be home soon. Mm-hmm. Well, soon to you might be 10 minutes.
Well, no, I know your
and so you're. I know you know my timing range now, but I mean then. I'm talking about then.
Then I knew it too.
You did not. You had just. Yes, you just had low expectations.
No, I knew it because I knew what. I've always known because of how observant of you I am. Right. The things that are still just within your. And for the record,
soon means like 30 minutes to an hour. Just
like again,
for me, that's what it means. 30 minutes to an hour. It is a range. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, I won't lie to the people. It means 30 minutes to an hour, and because I don't. If I tell you soon, I don't want to be more than an hour behind when I text you. That is true. However, so that's one end, right? Like that's his end of the consequence. However, on my end, though, if we're going back to the original example. I need time. I am a person who likes to go out and have experiences, and he and I both have a lot of things in common that we enjoy doing together, but we also have things that we know the other person doesn't enjoy as much, or we need time apart. And that's something that personally, as a in terms of my creative process and the way that I live in general, I need that. I need space. Because I want to have a reason to come back and tell you everything that just happened. Those cute little videos where they're like, girl, you can tell me, but you already know I'm gonna tell my husband. Like that. That's like you should understand that you're telling us both. But anyway, not always, but just saying. Because he's my best friend. So I want to go out and experience stuff. And so in the original example, what he's saying is that the guy in this situation, the husband, he needed an opportunity to miss her. She was always available. She was always texting while he was at work. She was always waiting for him when he got home. He never had any time away to actually miss her and actually want and long for her. And so when I'm coming home from these situations, I'm like, oh my goodness, I just had a great time with my friends. And there was a time in my life where I would go have fun with friends or family, and I wouldn't want it to end because like, this is the highlight of my situation right now. This is the highlight of my life, being able to connect with people. But that's not the case anymore. I can go do those things and have fun. And the highlight is I can't wait to get back to share it with you. So I'm like very excited and waiting to be like, oh, we're going to be so in love. We've had this time away. I really missed being with him. I've created this space now. And then I get there and he's like, no. So I think that balance that you're describing is really, really important. I feel like we've kind of presented it in a way where there's it's like this strange mixture. And in the book, it's presented in a way where there are distinct boundary or lines between circumstances.
But I mean,
that might not always be
it's the entirety of using all of these things. So it's not like a mixture of something, you're losing something or whatever. But like, I think the biggest struggles in that regard was like, even in that, it was like, there was so much like as much as my sister accuses me of being the introverted one, I'm not.
No, you're
not
great.
in that way. Like I'm fine with being with people, but I mean, like, how much that's not because you are so into people that it like drives me away from people.
Dang. Because
it's like I have been wanting for so long. Because we started dating in high school, and therefore you get time together, but you gotta share with everybody because you're a kid
and you're at school,
And so my mind at that point in time is like, all right, when we get our time, it's me and you,
right? And
even when we talked about it, like our big aspirations when we were in high school was we were gonna get married at 25.
Yeah, 22. We were going to have 22. Kids. We were going to start having kids at 25.
Oh, yeah, right. Because we were going to, we
wanted to get married right after college. We wanted to give it an appropriate amount of time for the adults to be all right with us getting married. That's essentially what we wanted. Even though we
probably would have done it earlier.
Yeah.
But after that, we were going to move to Italy because I was going to go to culinary school there, and you were gonna like shoot films and do plays and stuff.
I think I was gonna write, honestly. Write and dance. That's what I was gonna do.
I think so. I think that's what it was. Yeah. If I hadn't destroyed all of our notebooks, there would be evidence somewhere of any of this. But the funny thing about that was I was just ready to be away from everything because I knew there was something in me that needed the separation from family to gain my own sense of who I was, which is why God presented me with the separation from you so I could get a thing of who I was at that time. Because we otherwise would have just been kind of so caught up in...
We would have been codependent.
Examples, yeah. And it wouldn't have been what we needed for it to be. Right. And so I just think about that in the sense of like finally getting to that time. Because in my mind... a lot of what this brought up, so I'm even getting on to the resolution, right, is the most difficult part of the chapter that for me, because resolving, which in a lot of ways means you let go of your angers, you let go of your
you lay down whatever. Your life.
I
was just going to bring that up.
All these different things was difficult for me because a lot of the time, like I've been trained, like to let go of the anger is to lose. To let go of the anger is telling them they beat you. Ooh. Is telling them that they ain't gotta understand.
Wow.
And I know sometimes that especially when we talked before about like how Like if I'm being chastising or if I'm trying to like make a point, your thing was always, well, if you just say it nice and you
I'd receive it better.
And
it doesn't.
like
and,
in my mind,
by
I'm like,
encourage,
no.
You got to be specific. So by encourage, not you specifically. I'm not talking about you, baby. I'm just saying when you say something like you have to encourage me. So encouragement does not always mean you have to say pretty words to me. It doesn't always mean you have to say, baby, you're the best. Blah. That's not what encouragement means. In terms of how I understand it. I don't know. I feel this in this moment, so I hope that this will help someone as they listen to it. When you're encouraging a person or you're saying something that's difficult to hear from a place of encouragement, you're saying it from a place of, I know that I can say this and I know you can do this. So it's more of a restorative practice rather than a destructive one, because oftentimes when we say things like you did this wrong and you did that, and a lot of times I know personally I did internalize a lot of the lectures and rough things that I had to go through in terms of when my mother would chastise me, or when any of my guardians, my family members would not berate me, they would chastise me. I would feel so inadequate and depowered. Like I would feel like I'm powerless in this situation to not only defend myself, because I don't necessarily think that what you're saying to me is accurate of who I am internally. While it might be something I did, it's not who I am. Right. So I can't defend myself, but also I don't even know if I'm capable of doing what you're asking me to do, because you just keep telling me what I don't do right. And so when we talk about encouragement, I really pray that people start to think a little differently about what that word actually means, and how they use it, because that's what I felt like saying.
And then the balance of all of that, or the point I was getting to, was more so the difficulty is more so in what they were talking about in balance, and what they were talking about like in the earlier boundaries, which is I would feel sometimes that like I said earlier, if I do this in the way that she's asking me, or in the way that I'm thinking you're asking me, I guess, or whatever, like you'll never feel the consequence of whatever it is that of what I'm actually feeling, because you'll just be like, well,
we're good. And
like, and especially if I'm encouraging in the way that you're saying,
that's
it's
good.
like, because if I'm like, you did great on this,
and that's
you did great at
on
this at this specific thing,
right?
And then it's like, but so, and then if you ask the question, well, so what did I? And then I'm like, these are the things, like, exactly. And and it's like, instead of feeling inflated, you're deflated, because it's like, yes, you got the one thing done, which is encouraging, because it means you are growing. You're like, oh,
but even in the way you're saying that, exactly, it's very clear that in the delivery, there's a big old hole here. Well,
because I'm trying to express, like, because the need is like, hey, my need is this.
Yes,
this is what I need.
Right.
These are how these things come. So if it's like random thing, clothes, right?
Okay.
So if I'm like, hey, I need the clothes cleaned and folded.
Yes.
You cleaning them.
Yes.
It's great.
Uh-huh.
The lack of folding.
Right.
Causes still issue,
anxiety,
because I'm still not able to do the fullness of what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, hey, you cleaned them. I'm not expecting that if I'm like, hey, you cleaned them, that you then understand I still need you to fold them. And like, or the ramifications of, okay, you cleaned, you didn't fold, which means I still have to do this part.
Yes.
And when I come in to do this part, it takes away from this other thing that I'm doing. It puts me behind on this, puts me to this point. And therefore, like, I'm still not getting what it is that I needed. And therefore, encouraging you feels incorrect, because I don't know what that leads you to. If I'm showing, like, and even if I show you, like, hey, thank you for doing this, I'm still going to have to do this. This is, if I'm going to be, if I'm telling you these things, does that feel encouraging? Or am I supposed to just like leave it alone and just say, well, hey, I'm glad you cleaned it?
No. And that's kind of what I was getting at. I think that's why I felt the prompting to say that in that moment is it's not about when you say things like encouragement. It's not just about you did great at this. Good job. I'm going to give you a golden star. It's about, no, these are my expectations. You did this, which is awesome, but you did not do this. Or just straight up, hey, can you please do this? I noticed you did that. That was awesome, but you didn't do this part. Can you go ahead and do that? You know, like just the expectation and the understanding that I know you can do this. I know you're willing to do this. Please go do this, you know. Now and you're smiling like,
because you know, hold on. Because you know that you are so like, I will start with exactly.
I'm not saying it's going to work all the time. And this is not a catch-all. I just wanted to be sure because I'm like, brought that up. I thought I'd mention that.
Because that is one of the things we learned or that I learned in therapy every now and again the years ago that I went. Because I'm not going to, like, I got to be real transparent about that because I want to do more therapy, but I'm not going to present myself as if I'm doing it in the way that I would like to currently.
Right.
But anyway, so I will say, and I'm like, fam, I said on the front end.
But that goes back to what you were, what I feel you were going to get to when you first mentioned this portion, right? So once you get past the point of laying down your life, which is to lay down your control over, or your projected control over the other person, right? You lay down your anger. Okay, look, because that's not getting us anywhere. Instead, I'm going to do what I know I can do, which is control me.
Yeah.
These are the boundaries that I have. These are my limits. This is where I can draw the line. Anything beyond this line is a consequence that is a result of your or the other person's actions. Having those lines in place, whatever those lines are, and I think that determining that, of course, is can be difficult, and that's why I really appreciate the tools he gives at the end of the chapter. But you know, having those lines in place so that as you lay down your life, and you do it in love, you're coming from a place of love. It does feel more empowering because you're willingly submitting to the Lord at that point. Like it's just like that concept of forgiveness, right? You're forgiving the other person, not because they necessarily deserve it, you know. It's because you've experienced forgiveness for all of the things that you've done from the Lord. You're saying to the Lord, hey, this person did an injustice to me. They did wrong to me. But I don't have to be responsible or present to see them reap what they've sown. Like I'm removing myself from that circumstance because that's not my job. Vengeance is the Lord's. And in that, I'm experiencing freedom. I'm walking in newness. I'm walking in life. Not, you know, and so it's that kind of trade-off. I'm saying, okay, these are my boundaries. This is my line. And it really is interesting to see how that is supposed to play out in a marriage, which is the closest relationship I feel like you can have, short of maybe parenting, you know,
which is the next chapter. So we'll go into the steps of resolution. I'll just go through them and maybe I'll stop in some points every now and again. But number one is inventory the symptoms. Like first we have to recognize what the problem is, and then we have to agree that we're going to solve it. It can be, you know, whether it be frequency of sex, discipline in children, lack of togetherness, or unfair spending of money, which I know can be an issue between the both of us in terms of like making the actionable steps after
having discussions.
Well, yeah, but also after like seeing like, hey, we want to make this financial change. Like I remember before we got married, as we were trying to get this money together for the wedding, I was like, you know, I had stopped a lot. You did, because I was amazing. You know, I had just started collecting comics during a really great time in comics. And I don't think I was buying video games or something like that, or other little stuff that I like that I wanted. Cause I put all this stuff, cause I knew how much that would be. And then a lot of stuff like you'd be like, hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need, and I'm like, this ain't gonna help us with the wedding, but okay. And then when we, you know, instead of like kind of taking those actionable steps, I just kind of relented, which The next part or step 2 is identify the specific boundary problem. It's like, so where were the boundaries being stepped over? And it's like, well, our finances are being stepped over because we're bringing together a unified finance, or we're trying to.
Right.
And it's not about whether or not you got the money to spend it because you went and worked and this is your check. Like, this affects both of us. It affects, because while today that is an affordable thing, future-wise, you've hindered us somewhere. Or future-wise, we've hindered ourselves because of a decision today to not invest in our future.
And I like that you brought, I think that's a wonderful example. The other example that I want to just mention here that the book kind of talks about is like the way that a person may be having their boundaries violated in other areas. So they overstate a boundary in a particular area. So like the finances, they're acquiescing there, right? Or they're acquiescing in other places. And because of that, when it comes to something like spending time together, no, we're doing it this way. And they're very adamant about that because there's that imbalance of boundaries in other places.
Which I think leads into step 3, which is find the origins of the conflict. Because after you do all this stuff, you need to kind of look into what it is that is causing all this. What spiritually is causing this? What stronghold is putting you in a position that you don't know that it's a spiritual thing? Like you're experiencing different traumas.
And where the original boundary was violated. So it might not be in this current relationship. It might be with your parents. It might be with people that you've had relationship with before, friends and things like that, like in the past. So getting to the root of that experience and that boundary violation.
Step 4 was taking the good, which this involves making sure that you have a support system around you.
Yes.
We do not live in a vacuum. And a lot of the times you got to build up with the examples of what it is you're trying to see. So you can't often go off and ask your single friends,
how should I deal with my husband's tendencies?
How should I deal with my married issues? And it's not to put them in a bad spot, because there are things that they can help with. But in regards to like strengthening, you got to have a support group of like, okay, who is the older married couple, or who is the married couple that is going through the same things ish, that are also trying to do better, that can understand from an unbiased point of view how to encourage. Can I go talk to my pastor? Can I go talk to, anybody?
An elder in your community or your church. A deacon in some cases, whoever, is in, that the Lord has brought it to your life. But this is an area personally that I really hope that Bible Study Brother and I are able to kind of grow in, is connecting with
sorry y'all,
more
I
of a
also forgot I
support
dropped
system.
my whole thing. It is I, Bible Study Brother, but I'm also known as Icarus Gray over at Gray and this is the most wonderful podcast of your day.
Yes,
30 minutes in.
But it is though. You've got the evidence of that now.
Which number 5 is practice.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's one of the things that I think sometimes the planning period of these things can get you caught up, because you get so much into planning that it makes it harder for you to practice.
Well, the beautiful thing about what he says is to do it in a safe environment, right? And so with people that you already have stable relationships with, that love you unconditionally. So I think that can kind of help with that part.
6 is say no to the bad, which is putting limits on the bad in your relationship. It's standing up to abuse, saying no to unreasonable demands, remembering the parable of talents. There was no growth without risk, and facing up to fear.
Right.
Being successful is not as important as stepping out and trying.
Yeah.
7, which is one of the things that they, every marriage counselor and or a lot of them, I should say, because I cannot speak for everybody. And a lot of encouragement is always forgive. They always tell you, don't go to bed upset. Because again, I did a whole sermon on this. The person you're hurting is not them. Yeah. You are only hurting yourself. Yeah. You are holding in resentment and bitterness, which turns into, which in a spiritual realm then turns into physical things on you. Disease. It can turn into disease, sickness, higher cholesterol, everything else. Because a lot of times, there are so many people who like eating quote unquote bad foods doesn't affect them, but it's because they're not harboring other things within themselves that circumvents that. Like if you have anxiety on top of eating bad, then all these things are like compounding. Yeah. Number 8 is becoming proactive. So it's instead of allowing someone else to be in control of those things, you start stepping forward because you know that that's the thing for you. Like got to clean this, or I got to go and do this, or I got to work on this. And I have to get in front of it because if I let it slip, then it's going to affect me in a negative fashion. And then lesson 9 was learn to love in freedom and responsibility. Remember, the goal of boundaries is love and coming out of freedom. Like at the end of it, you're not setting a boundary, especially not with your partner who you have become one with, to isolate anybody. You're doing this to grow the love and grow the environment for love, which is often really hard and really difficult because, like I said, you are dealing with so many different aspects of where your boundaries weren't set. Yeah. Being, and we talk about this often with our trio, being in a codependent relationship as such it was difficult to then step out and try and like lead with love or separate because you're so used to this being the definition of love.
Right.
And so stepping into new places or stepping into places for yourself, things that are going to help you be better and have a much more nourishing relationship with God are frightening. They'll cause anger because you're fighting against a lie that you don't know is a lie. Like codependency in and of itself is a lie to you that you cannot do on your own. And on your own, more so in the sense of like, you cannot have the confidence to walk in the boldness of the freedom of the Lord, more so is what I mean. Because sometimes like we know that we need people, but you have to assess how and where and with God always. So those were some of the things. Did I ask you what was the most difficult for you with the book?
I kind of mentioned the most difficult aspect. I think for me is in terms of what we just read, definitely getting to the origins of where certain boundaries have been violated for me, and why it presents a sense of anxiety sometimes to try to establish clear boundaries with different people, and get it and working through what those are, taking responsibility for what I want, need, and desire. And then, because oftentimes I think there's a place in our culture, as Black people, as Christians, where we believe we have to just, and thanks be to God, our pastor was actually talking about this today, where we think we just have to stand and take it. Otherwise you're being selfish. Otherwise you're being self-centered. Otherwise you're doing something negative and that's sinful. But that's not biblical. That's not right. And that actually provides a foothold for the enemy.
Yeah. Well, and also, thinking about it in a sense of like, because the bigger portion, I think also what he was mentioning is just because we as believers cannot be possessed by principalities and other things does not mean we cannot be
influenced or oppressed
and influenced by them.
Yeah.
And so often you get into a place where the biggest lie is that you have to suffer alone. The biggest deception sometimes is this is what you should do. You can't. Yeah. You gotta present this. You always have to present this, and it's like no. We biblically, and that's not even correct. We mourn together. We did all these things together in a way that like was uplifting to get you back to the place where you needed to be. We took care of those that are wounded and hurt, and you can never not tell a diagnosis and expect to be healed. You have to say what's going on, but you also have to be able to give yourself a scan to figure those things out.
Right.
And when you're trying to deny those things, it doesn't make the problem go away.
No.
It just causes the problem to grow because you're acquiescing to the oppression. You're giving in to something you feel you deserve when condemnation is not of God.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you?
Anyway, well, no, that I started mine because mine was the whole the resolution part of it in all. So that was my biggest thing. I think that like overall, after we are at 6 years of marriage, we'll be at 7.
Did you say 6?
Yeah.
That was, oh goodness. For some reason, I thought I heard 60. My God.
No.
We're not even that old yet.
No, praise the Lord. I don't know if this podcast will be that long, but hopefully, man, if it is, and like we've given it to somebody or whatever, that we'll be able to talk about 60 years. But in 6 years of marriage, I think getting this book was one of those things that has allowed me to focus solely on being better, for me to be better, for you to be better as a person first, relationship with God, but secondarily as a husband, as a brother, as a friend, because improper boundaries cause so many stumbles. They cause so much trepidation and just anxiety of like things because you don't feel as equipped to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And even what we're talking about today is putting on the armor, the full armor.
Yes.
And you got to put on the full armor because what you're fighting is not physical. It doesn't even have a lot of times things to do with the person that's sitting across from you as much as it does like finding the roots of what spiritual, disconnect is going on here. Mm-hmm. What is the actual need? What are the things that you can do in connection with God to solve these things? So all in all, we appreciate you guys for listening. Remember that now, as I say this, all of the links to our social media are down in the description. If you'd like to get in contact with us to be a guest or to get prayer, you can go to our Facebook page, Bible Study Girl, or facebook.com/Bible Study Girl, or use the email biblestudygirl at biblestudygirl2019@gmail.com, which will get you to us, and we do share this account. So if you need us to respond, that is where we'll respond. And remember, guys, that it is not I preach, it's not you preach, but we preach. And until next time, keep preaching.